Layla, hello.
Hi, Dave.
Good to see you.
It's really nice to speak to you again.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I think it's been, I don't know, a few months since I've actually had you on because I know you from the group that I take. Is the right term an alumni? Is that how you say it?
I think you can phrase it that way.
Is
Kind
that
of
how you
grab.
say? Is that how you say the word alumni?
Yeah, alumni.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're part of an elite community of people that have gone through a process and used to sit on the group that I take for aftercare for post what would you call it?
Treatment.
There we go. So yeah, you was on the group, so that's we got some familiarity. I've invited you to come on and share your story because I think it's quite an impactful one, and I'm sure it can inspire and motivate others to perhaps take away from what you're about to sort of share.
hmm
How old are you, Layla?
I'm 18 years old.
Wow, wow, wow. 18. I always say this, I failed to do what you've done at such a young age. When did you start your journey properly?
Um, at 16, or well, it was actually the day of my 17th birthday,
Was
but
it? Was it
yeah,
really?
it was.
Happy birthday. Happy 17th birthday. I'm now going to start a process of self-development.
Yeah, but I think I was definitely searching for a way out a couple years prior, but really where my I stepped into recovery and it became effective was when I entered treatment, so at 17.
Wow, so inspiring to me, honestly. I always sort of cast my mind back to that time in my own life, and I can't even imagine. I mean, I blooming well needed it, but I just couldn't imagine having the solution presented to me. I think people tried to, but I didn't really want to receive it or hear it. But surely that's part of your attitude, surely preceding you actually starting it was resistance, right?
Yeah, I was quite independent because I feel like I was very high functioning. I didn't really know I had um mental health problems. It was kind of something that was I really indulged in private. So on the outside, I had this very like high functioning kind of perfect life. So I ignored it for a really, really long time, even though especially my mother was telling me that I should probably seek help, whether it was through therapy or treatment, but I was very against it. I did not want to go to treatment. Um, I was like, even though my family's quite open about it, I was like the perpetrator of the taboo. I didn't want to go to treatment, but eventually, after trying a lot of things, like I moved in with my dad and that didn't work. So eventually, I just decided that if I was going to do anything, I was just gonna give it like one last try, and if it didn't work, then I can at least say like I tried everything. But it did end up working, which is good, but I didn't expect it to.
Well, I relate. I so relate. My mum too suggested many times, David, I feel like you really could do with talking to someone about your problems. And I was like, no, 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 not happening. And I just thought, I'm not having some complete stranger dissect the inner workings of my mind. And I just thought it'd lock me up if anyone knew what really was going on in my head.
Yeah.
Oh man. So talk us, are you right to sort of, should we go, let's land on the pre part, like before you found the solution, if you want to call it that. What would you diagnose if you didn't have a formal diagnosis, what at that time, like when you was really sort of in that um space of feeling not great, to put it mildly. Um, How would you diagnose what was going on? What do you call it?
Mm, I think, well, I was very heavily depressed, but it was quite a high functioning depression. So I just felt really, I had low energy, low mood, low sleep, like, or I wasn't sleeping well, so low energy, of course. But
Hmm.
because I was still able to do all of my everyday tasks, I was still performing really well in school. I didn't really notice the issue. Um, but I was very isolated in that time period. Although I was always surrounded by my family, I felt really alone. Like whenever I reflect back on those periods, I only kind of like remember myself and how I was feeling. It was a very like dark period in my life. And um so yeah, I was excelling on the outside, but when I would come home, I really struggled with self-hatred and self-loathing. So that unfortunately like manifested in different forms of self-harm. But I was very I hated myself a lot. There was a lot of self-hatred and there's a lot of anger towards myself, and I would take that out in various ways, but eventually it just kept escalating. And
Hmm.
a lot of my family actually didn't know this was kind of going on behind the scenes, or at least the extent of it, until the very end. So yeah, it was a very, very lonely descent into my
Yeah.
depression.
Again, I relate. See, it just goes to show, it's a completely different sort of, there's a lot of differences to your story and my story, but there's so many similarities in what you're describing, I really relate. That functioning part where to the outside world we can present, if you ask me how you doing, I'm like, yeah, I'm great.
Yeah.
But the reality is the polar opposite, and we just somehow mask it, right? So an example of how you, because I know how I did it to myself, there's so many different ways that I can break myself, where you sort of, would you say it's like punishing yourself for the way you feel? How,
Yeah.
how, how would you describe it?
Um, it definitely feels like a form of punishment because I remember very vividly that any like negative feelings I had about myself, like I don't know, it was just an excuse. Like in my self-harm, it was usually just kind of a, you deserve this, or I don't know. It was just really expressing hatred towards something, but except that something was myself. So it
Hmm.
was very hate-filled, and sometimes it kind of felt a little bit like a Jekyll and Hyde situation where
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was like this outside persecutor, but it was myself. So yeah, it
yeah.
was yeah, felt a little bit crazy.
It's like your own judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And we create and hold on to like these narratives that, you're a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. And then you just yeah, yeah. Okay. And there's a lot of anger associated to that, right?
Yeah. Anger is definitely the emotion I think I struggled with the most. It's very prominent in my story. Um, yeah, especially from a young age. I had a lot of anger, but in some ways, when I was angry, I felt the most myself because I'm, or I mean, I really struggled with perfectionism and people pleasing, but usually when I'm angry, I'm able to stand up for myself and really like be confident in what I'm saying. Whereas normally I don't really have that like strength and confidence or had. So anger is like, I don't know, anger defined me for a lot of my life, especially with in my relationships with my parents and my sister. Um, Even though no one was calling me like the angry child or this bad child, but I just for some reason from a young age really latched on to the anger part, especially since I had a twin. Um, and I was the more angry twin and the more rebellious twin. So a lot of like I always felt like I was the one getting in trouble, and or I don't know, felt like the problem child a little bit. So I really just linked that with my anger, and yeah, I don't know, I felt like from a young age I defined myself as someone who was angry.
Mm.
And yeah, I persecuted myself for that later on.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's almost like we take on an identity. It's like, oh, this is who I am, so this is what I need to be, and we just, um, yeah, we embody it, and it defines us.
Yeah.
I think it's very common in a lot of family dynamics where there's like the common term would be the black sheep.
Mhm.
Um, who is the black sheep in the family. It's interesting you got a twin. So your twin in comparison's just moderate in behavior, just would you say, I'm going to use the term regulated and ordinary, if that's a term, in comparison to would you call it problem behavior, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely what it looks like from the outside, but of course,
Yeah.
both of us have had very similar lived experiences and we've just chosen to deal with it in different ways. Um,
Mm.
Unfortunately, mine became a little bit more self-destructive in a way, but yeah, I because my sister's was a little bit more tame and a little bit more regulated, I also started to develop a little bit of like I don't want to say loathing because I don't hate my sister, but in any like way or shape or form, it's just like because she was more normal, I would always compare myself because having a twin makes it 10 times easier to compare yourself to anybody because she looks exactly like you. You're the same age. You guys live in the same family. You guys are, it's the story of nature versus nurture. And because my sister was more self regulated, I thought my nature was just to be bad. And that like really affected my self image.
Yeah, and your self-esteem, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, all of it, self-esteem, the sense of self-worth, like you've already covered that one. You didn't like who you were. You didn't value yourself. That's why you used to break yourself and internalize the anger, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense, makes sense. Oh man. So how long, I mean, what's the early stage? What point do you, because I can remember points in my childhood where I just recall just being this sort of a bit aloof. I felt like I remember, absolutely remember looking at my family and at points thinking, who are these people? Like, I felt so sort of alienated to my own family, and it wasn't their fault. And it's just something that was me. It's just how I felt. I don't know if that's something that have you ever thought about that? Like, was there an early point in your life where you just felt a little bit different or indifferent to the people around you? Not just your family, but just in general.
Um, Within my family for sure, especially since for the majority of my life, my parents have been divorced and I've been living with my mom.
Hmm.
Um, I felt so it was just us three. It was just me, my mom, and my sister. And my sister and my mom had more in common. So I felt very, very different from my family. And I always just felt that, they were a pair and I was just a side. Like I was more like my father. I would often get compared to my father. Um, so in my family, I definitely felt very different. But also in terms of just like my peers because my story is a little bit odd, but I never really struggled with substances. I was quite the opposite. I didn't really experiment much, so I felt very different from my peers as well. So it was quite isolating for a lot of my like younger teenage years and especially in my childhood, I felt very different, but I don't I've grown out of that sentiment.
Well, it's interesting to me, coming from me, who's someone who did latch on to substances and chemical, experimentation and eventually chemical dependency. I'm always fascinated by the why someone doesn't latch on to that because it's not for everyone. What was your reasoning behind not doing that?
um I think it was a control thing because I had experimented with different substances, but I really, really like something about the loss of control and not being completely in myself, not being able to completely like control my actions, or it really like panicked me because sometimes I felt like there was like my rational mind was like trapped inside of something that wasn't functioning properly. And that really freaked me out and I hated it. So I just never really went down um, that path. But eventually I did struggle with substances a little bit, but it was more it wasn't like mind altering substances, it was more like sleeping medications and things. But that was kind of like an escape mechanism because there was a point where I really disliked my life, and it was kind of between the period of um when like before I went to the clinic, where I knew there was this period of time before I could take my intake, where I kind of just slept through a couple months because I really just didn't want to be awake. So that's kind of like the only reliance on substances that I've had in my story. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think it was
yeah,
mainly a control thing.
yeah. That makes sense. I get that. I understand what you're saying. That's common. It's kind of like I'm just gonna get into a catatonic state, you know. I'm just gonna sedate myself just it's a numbing thing, isn't it? I feel just I just need to check out and not do life, you know. Do you feel like that's avoidance as well as well, it's escapism obviously, but it's that's avoidance, right?
I think it is 100% avoidance
Yeah.
because I just didn't want to face anything.
Yeah, you just couldn't. It was was it, a sense of overwhelm something in your story, I'm guessing.
Well, nearing the end, or I guess the end of my problem behavior um, pre-treatment era, I don't know, there was definitely a large sense of overwhelm leading up to that. I was like really still battling with my mental health and my feelings and my emotions, and there was still, I don't know, a little bit of fight. So it really did feel overwhelming, but at some point I was really struggling with like suicidal ideation, but I think that's very common. But eventually it turned a little bit more active. And in that point, I kind of had let go of all of my like struggles because I think that's also a common feeling. I nothing really carried much significance anymore. So, I withdrew myself from school, and I knew that I was only going to treatment for my mother because although this is a really like messed up thought, I felt really guilty because my mom is quite Christian and she believes that suicide is like a selfish act. So I that's also what I believed, and I just decided that, oh, if I went to treatment and it didn't work, at least like, you know, it at least I can like give up without feeling as bad because I know that I tried everything.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that period of time I was kind of just, I don't know, I just needed to get through the days and I didn't want to be like awake to do it because there wasn't much going through my mind. So I just decided that I was going to sleep a lot and that's what I did.
Yeah, again, I relate. I really do. For me, it was like I had suicidal ideations. You know, I used to obsess about it. In fact, you know, I'd lie there in a sort of like a sedated state, semi comatose, just fixating on, you know, I used to just think of like, you know, it's just so dark, but when I think about it, it's crazy. You know, I used to know what playlist I was going to have at my funeral, you know, and I used to arrange the seating placements in the funeral of where everyone was going to be sitting, and it was all very, very sort of self, you know, I was just very self-absorbed in my own sort of misery, you know, and it was all very tragic, you know.
Mhm.
And I really obsessed about that, you know, about the thought or the prospect of just not being alive anymore, and
Mhm.
you know, and the fact that people would be, you know, what people would think, and you know, oh, people would they care or would they miss me, and blah blah blah. I was so fixated on it, and but that sort of sedation was kind of like in a way my my way of not doing it, if that makes sense. You know, I don't think I never made an attempt to actually end my life. You know, I didn't want to be on this planet. That's how dark it got for me in my sort of like, you know, worst days. But I didn't I didn't feel like I could actually commit to doing it, if that makes sense. So my way of like dealing with that was just to sort of like do a slow fade away. You know, I was sort of like just in sedation. You know, I just used to, and that's why I was definitely at that time of my life taking a lot of chemicals that were like downers, you know, just to put me to sleep.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you relate to what I'm saying, but that's how it was for me anyway. Um, it's sort of like relinquishing the act of actually doing it, of doing anything fatal, you know. I don't know. Anyway, so you're here talking about it, so well done. Um, so from that point, would you say that was like the lowest point for you was when you had that sort of like those ideations?
Well, I definitely relate to some things you said because my ideations span over a couple years. Um, but my lowest point was I did have an attempt. I overdosed. And that's kind of what led me to go into treatment because it was obviously an unsuccessful attempt. Um, but nobody really talks about having an attempt and then waking up and then kind of seeing the impact it has on your family because I don't know, that's the only thing that made me go into treatment was like my mother and my sister. They were very distraught and they were very panicked. And, it's kind of just like if it had like happened, like those are the emotions that they probably would have gone through if you weren't there. And of course, because I had this like narrative of suicide was selfish, that is like the only thing that made me go to treatment was just seeing the impact that it had on my family. And I just decided that, well, I mean, like my last gift to them was to go to treatment. And if it didn't work, then I feel
Yeah.
like then I would feel less guilty.
Yeah, like you've given it your all, you know, you've
Yeah,
done everything to the best of your ability. And if that doesn't work, then you've only got one other option because you can't continue to go on in the way that you've been going on, you know. It's not
yeah,
working. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, I think, well, I know from many people that I've been around where someone has had a successful attempt where it's followed through and they're no longer here. It's very clear that you know if your pain is not processed, if you don't process the pain that you're suffering with, and you do end your life, you pass on that pain.
yeah,
You know, it's that simple. You know, that's what happens. And I don't know if that is, you know, like you say, you know, is that selfish or is that just a tragic consequence to, you know, someone who just can't cope and deal with life on life's terms because it's just too unbearable, you know?
yeah,
Um, yeah, wow, makes it all more profound the fact that you are here talking to us right now. You're a survivor.
yeah,
um, we, so your your treatment, right? So you've just identified that that's what qualified you to go that point where you just was like, I need to go. I absolutely recognize you could see that you needed to change something, right?
yeah,
And I'm guessing that you were terrified of that kind of unknown space that you were yet to step into.
Mm, I don't know. I feel like I had really just given up on everything that I went into treatment so indifferent. There was a point where I just didn't really see myself coming out of treatment. Like, I didn't know what I was expecting, like, whether I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, but I just like walked into treatment kind of like it was a life sentence and I just wasn't going to come out. But I was so indifferent about it, which is not, like, I'm quite a nervous person. I'm quite shy. I usually overthink a lot about new situations and normally I'm very nervous. I didn't have any of that. And, I was just kind of there and I don't know. Yeah, I was just there. I don't know a better way to explain it, but I was super passive at the start. Yeah, kind of just taking in what people were telling me, but I wasn't really processing it. So, yeah, that was, I don't know, treatment was, or at the start, it was, I don't know, I kind of felt like a little bit like a vegetable,
What sort of vegetable? If you had to name a vegetable, what vegetable would you say you was at that point?
like a parsnip.
A parsnip.
Yeah.
Why a parsnip?
I don't know. I feel like I identify with a parsnip in that moment. It's kind
Be-
of bland, kind of, not very, like, not a very pretty vegetable.
They're quite tasty, like when roasted, though. That's like I've got an image of a parsnip not being a bad thing. Maybe an old moldy parsnip that's not been, you know,
Just
roasted.
raw parsnip.
Yes. Oh my days. Anyway, Layla, so let's just land on this, right? What you had some willingness to go. You said you did it for um more for you. You've already said, my mum, my sister, you could see the effect it was having on them, right? Was there any part of you that went for yourself, do you feel?
Um, I think I don't think so because the clinic really gave me back a lot in my life. Like I had no ambitions, like I had no, I don't know, no like drive. Like there wasn't really a reason for me to live to the next day and treatment restored that in me. So I think if I did go for myself, I mean, I didn't even know what there was to offer. I didn't know that, these things had been so long forgotten to me, especially since I'm quite young. So for me, 8 years is the majority of my life, um, or at least that I can remember.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. I didn't know like how good my life could get essentially. So I don't think I really went for myself, but I'm really grateful that I did go in the end.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember the initial s- proceeding actually going and doing it? How did did you just go, oh, okay, I'll go, you had some conversations with your mum and did she find a place or did you have, because you're only, what, at this point, was you 17, did you say, when you went in
Yeah, I went in
on your
right
birthday?
after my birthday, yeah. So I was 17, but I don't know, I was really not, my situation was quite urgent, so there was kind of like between my attempt and when I was in treatment, there was only really a week and a half.
Wow.
So everything happened really quickly and of course was fortunate to get treatment in the country that I lived in. So it was very, very fast and
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not going to say what country you live in, but you're not a British citizen.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So because that wouldn't happen in this country. It's like, we're not quite there yet with, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, resources out there, but it's just too many people and it's kind of like it's outstripped to get a quick turnaround. You're on a waiting list and you're lucky if you make it. So you're blessed that your country of origin where you reside, it's available and you manage to get a spot.
Yeah.
So that's good. So do you feel it's all a bit of a blur that time? Any standout points? I mean, when you land, you do an intake, and I know the place you went to, and I know the process. So you end up in front of, I'm gonna guess the clinical psychiatrist or a psychologist of sorts.
I mean,
Um, Sorry, go on.
no, go ahead.
Is that the first time you've had exposure, preceding that before you went to treatment? Did you ever that you said that your mum said, I think you should maybe see someone like, da da da. Did you ever actually explore that before that first time you landed in intake for a clinic for treatment?
I had actually, but I was more open to kind of like outpatient therapy than I was inpatient treatment because that felt a little less like I was crazy. So I had tried it, but the thing is, my family moves around quite a lot. So the maximum amount of sessions I've ever had with the therapist has been probably two, purely because we move around a lot. But then, kind of nearing the end of my mental health story, or like the bad parts at least, I did actually have a psychiatrist and a therapist, and I was medicated for a while, but I hated that experience. But that's kind of the only contact that I've had with like the medical field around my mental health. It was very, very brief.
And by the sounds of it, it wasn't the most productive time in your life.
No, and I'm a great performer, so I, only in a couple months before my attempt, I spoke to this therapist, and she essentially told my mom that she thought there was nothing wrong with me because, I'm very good at putting on a performance for people.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's classic, man. I mean, I know you enough, Layla, to know. Yeah, I could just see you absolutely sitting in front of the shrink, if you want to call it that. Sorry, any therapists out there to call them shrinks. Um, I can just imagine you, um, yeah, sitting there coercing and would you use the words coercion and manipulation?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a form of manipulation. I don't think there's any like malicious intent, but I just was so worried about my image. Like I was some like Victorian noble person or something, but yeah, I just didn't want people to know what was going on. I'm a very private person. And also I thought that the thoughts I was having and the things I was feeling were very, you know, disturbing a little bit and eccentric. So I didn't want people to know was thinking like that. So, I put on what everybody else sees me as. I was like a perfectionist. I was high performing in school and, I was feeling fine. But also, I had a really hard time showing vulnerability and opening up about my history. Like I was very closed off. There's just something in me that couldn't let down those walls. So when I came into like a therapy session, I just didn't know what to talk about because like where do you start and like where do you end? Like what I didn't know how to do it. So eventually the therapist was like, "Is there anything you want to talk about?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so." So, that's just kind of how it went.
Oh man, I relate. I relate. I mean, it's so common, Layla. That what you're describing. I just so relate to everything you're describing. It's the nature of, I feel like, the human design to want to protect vehemently our inner workings of our head, and how we feel, what's going on in our heart, inside. We protect it like our life depends on it because it kind of feels like it does, and it's survival. And I think it's an instinct that it's our ego that protects us. So, like you, I was very, very, very good in the art of deception and masking, and yeah, not even allowing people to get a sense. If I was put in front of someone who, you know, had the ability to, in my mind, lock me up, put me away. Because you used the word eccentric, I really relate to that. It's that kind of, uh, what would you call it? Another word for that? Do you feel like you'd call yourself strange, like the way you thought and behaved behind closed doors?
Yeah, I mean, I felt crazy when I used to like reflect on the things I was thinking because I was like, I'm such like, I don't know, I present as such a normal person, pretty standard family, privileged, good grades, but then behind closed doors, I was thinking these really disturbing thoughts. And there was like a point where I felt like I was like, damn, like am I crazy? Because like, why am I thinking these things? Like, I felt really disconnected from who I was behind closed doors and who I presented. I mean, who I showed the world. It
Yeah,
felt like two completely different people, and I was a little bit scared of the person that I was behind closed doors.
yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Jekyll and Hyde earlier.
Yeah,
So it's exactly that. Yeah. Again, I relate, there's two sides of me. Um, and what I've come to learn is, we have a shadow side and we just have to, um, befriend it and understand it and embrace it rather than be afraid of it, right?
yeah, for sure.
Um, okay, so this is it. So you've ended up in treatment.
Yeah.
I think we've got enough of where you was at and where you've come from. Um, okay, so that's set the scene. So so you end up in treatment, and now it's time to. You're not an outpatient, you're inpatient. How long was you in there for?
I was in for 10 weeks.
Okay. And you knew that when you signed up that you was going to go for 10 weeks?
Yeah. I
How did you feel about how did you actually initially feel about that? Because that's a long time for a 17-year-old.
um I don't know, I was really just I did not care about anything at that point, so I don't think I really fully grasped how long 10 weeks was until, I started recovering a little bit and then I was like, "Oh shit, that's kind of a long time."
Oh shit, what have I signed up to?
Yeah.
Uh, all right, so um, when you sat in front of you do an intake, so you have to do an assessment pre going into treatment, and then you end up in treatment. Um, do you feel them walls were still very much in place and you wasn't letting anyone in?
Definitely at the start because I don't know why I went into the clinic like with my like outside world persona, but
Hmm.
she was still definitely there. So I was still definitely like perfectionist. I would get up and I would dress well and, you know, people kind of wondered why I was in there for a long time. And then I remember there's like we had to do shares and our first share is a risk trust share. And because I'm such a perfectionist, like I was like so paranoid about like not performing well on this share that like I produced the least vulnerable, most surface level, like, like any average person would think I'm being vulnerable. Really, I wasn't sharing anything vulnerable. And I was immediately called out for it. And then that is kind of when I was like, oh, okay, these are not like the average people. Like I can't just like give
Yeah,
them something and then they'll accept it. Like, no, they actually want to like know the the nitty gritty. So then I kind
they're,
of let
they're,
down my guard a little bit after that.
they're on to me.
Yeah, for sure.
They're on to me like a smell a rat. And I know, and as well as you do, why these people, why could they see through it? Why could they identify that you were wearing a mask? Like, why could they tell you were masking? How did they know?
Because they've been there, they've done that. I mean, I feel like everybody that's gone through treatment gets really good at like identifying
Yeah,
somebody who's still masking just because you're so familiar with the process of it.
yeah. There's a saying, isn't there? You spot it, you've got it.
Yeah.
And so not taking anything away from any professionals or specialists. You call them professionals, call them specialists. That You know, people like yourself, Layla, I've sat in front of them as well. You know, if they're really, really good, they'll spot it that you're masking.
Yeah.
And that's the make or break to someone actually getting the help they need is if they're challenged, because a good teacher will challenge the student. And maybe you was never challenged by any of these specialists or professionals because they didn't have their own lived experience knowing that you're masking.
Yeah. I
Ha-
definitely think that was a big part in it.
Yeah. And then you end up in a place where it's full of people that have the same shared lived experience, not just as, you know, inpatients, but, you know, the whole staff team, the whole clinical, everything, part of that place has a wealth of experience, lived experience, and they will just call you out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You got nowhere to hide.
Yeah, that is that is for sure. There's nowhere to hide in that place, but in some ways it's good.
So what week was that you finally, was that the first week that that happened?
Um, yeah, or the first week and then the second week I got like really called out for perfectionism and masking and, you know, like putting up this wall between me and treatment. And then after that, I don't know, it's kind of smooth sailing for me. I never really got picked on or called on or as we would call it in treatment flamed.
Yeah, flamed.
Yeah, past my second week. So, I mean, that's because I don't know, I became really open to it because somebody had finally opened my eyes to the fact that I was lying to myself. Because, you know, I really believed what I was saying, but I was lying. Like, I was drinking my own Kool-Aid. I was believing my own lies. And that really scared me in some ways. I was like, wow, how do you, like, you're supposed to know yourself the best, but then other people are showing you that you're like lying to yourself. And, you know, that kind of shifted my perspective. And then I started being really open to treatment, which I'm really grateful for because a lot of other fellows take a longer time or like further in their treatment to like finally accept the changes. But you know, I became very accepting as of my third week. And I think that's really what made my treatment so beneficial and is a large part of my success today.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree, Layla. Yeah, you got the most out of it. Week three of a 10-week process. You had um, yeah, you got a good head start there.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
you could really sort of utilize what was, you know, why you was there and what was on offer. And you obviously did. Well, I know you did. So the people that you met in there, um, do you feel for the first time in your life, you met people, um, because you're 17, I'm guessing there's people that are older than you, some that might have been the same age or a little bit younger, right?
Yeah.
Do
Uh,
you, sorry, go on.
no, everybody was like around. It was a youth clinic, so most people, I was kind of right in the center of the age demographic.
Okay, perfect. Do you feel that that helped? Do you feel if you'd gone somewhere where it was older, like a lot older, you know, like adults, sort of old, in your mind at 17, do you feel that would have been a hindrance? Would you feel it's beneficial being in a youth place?
I think so because I think I mean you're in there for 10 weeks. You need friends and
Mm.
friendship to not feel so alone. And if you're in a place with people who you can't really relate with, like I myself feel like maybe I could conjure up like a friendship or two with somebody who's older than me just because I'm pretty level-headed. But you know, I wouldn't have felt really a connection. It would have been quite a surface level connection. So I think the fact that I was surrounded with people who are my age, but also people from so many different nationalities, that really helped me because I mean, I wasn't just surrounded with one type of person, and I've had quite a diverse upbringing. And even though I'm not French, I speak French. So, you know, I met fellows in there who were also French, and it made me feel more at home because, you know, I could speak all of my languages, and there were people my age. They knew what we were talking about. Like, they knew what we were doing in school. I don't know. There's just so much in common. So it made it so much,
Mm.
I don't know, more relatable.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. How many languages do you speak?
I only speak two fluent.
Oh, okay. It's like oh, I speak seven languages. It's like, God. I've always wanted to have a an extra language in my artillery. I'm yet to learn. I need to. Okay, so friendship, community, sense of like-minded, kindred souls, spirits, whatever you want to call it. It really did lend itself to your process, yeah?
Yeah, it did.
Great. And so it sounds like for you, treatment wasn't, it can't have been all um, a cruise, you know, and I say a cruise, it's never a cruise for anyone unless someone goes in and really does just have the attitude of, I'm just going to play the game. I'm not here for me. I don't want it. I'm just going to bide my time. And then when I get out, I'll just go back to my old life, business as usual. Did you really feel that you had a profound realization in there that you wanted to change your life?
I think so, because you're surrounded with people who are in the same situation as you and fighting, but you're also surrounded by so many people who have been successful, especially since we had guest speakers every
Mm,
single week almost. You know, so you hear so much success, it kind of makes you feel like it's possible. And they don't really let you in on the, I mean, they mention it, but they don't really tell you, like, hey, you're going to come out of the clinic and pretty much 80% of your fellows are going to relapse. Like, they don't tell you that. So you really feel like that if you go through treatment, success is the more likely option, even though, I mean, now I know that it isn't.
mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, so yeah, I don't know, for the first time in a while, I was really motivated to get my life back because, you know, I was having a lot of fun and I don't know, I finally was excited for life. I mean, it took this wasn't until the end where I really like, you know, wanted to like, you know, live my life and go do things and I didn't really have ambitions until later, but you know, I was there and I was doing the dance, but it was not easy. There was definitely times where I was told things I didn't want to hear, and then also I struggled with my anger a lot, and um, I also felt in some ways a little bit like I don't know abandoned near the end because I had a very unstable home situation, which was kind of identified as like the main cause. Like for me to be successful in my recovery, I needed stability, um, because that's something that just hasn't been present in my life.
Yep.
So I was very, 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 very upset with all of the treatment staff and everybody that they were telling me, like, you have to go back into this situation. Because, you know, they tried hard to try to find me like a safe house or something, but because of my age, because of my gender, it just was not possible. It wasn't feasible. I was still a minor and I was a female. So pretty much the most difficult like combination. But so yeah, I felt very abandoned by them at the end, but
Yeah.
you know, there wasn't much I could do.
It's really, you've just illuminated how tragic it is, the fact that you're a young, vulnerable, not vulnerable in the way that you was pre-clinic, but still you're vulnerable, you know, you're fresh in treatment, very new to it all. You're about to come out into the world and going back to what I would always call the crime scene
Mhm.
of the environment, you know, whether that's school or friendship groups or the family home, whatever, you know, we're going back out and we've got some tools and we're in recovery from, you know, the formative part of our lives before we went to treatment. But, you know, we really need to be in a good situation to really have a success. And a big part of that relapse, the collapse of the, you know, the progress that you make is when we go back into something where it's not, you know, the scaffolding, if you want to call it that, is not in place, you know.
Yeah.
That's from what I can identify. I've got a lot of evidence that I've observed over the years, the data, if you want to call it that, where that's what makes or breaks a successful recovery going forward is aftercare.
Yeah, for sure.
So I didn't know that actually. I didn't realize that, Layla, about, you know, when you was coming out, that was what you was trying to get and you didn't get it. So it's unfortunate because it should be really very much available for a young minor female who's in your position to have some options, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel like my first year out of the clinic would have been much easier, but in the end I still persevered, but I did
Mm,
actually relapse after the clinic. Um,
I'm not
but that
surprised.
was important experience for me because I didn't feel the sense of relief I did before from self-harming. Like I didn't feel the calm.
Mm.
So I just didn't touch it after that because it didn't work anymore.
Yeah, just land on that a minute because this is really significant to anyone listening. You know, you might be a parent, it could be a younger person or whoever listening to this. And we're talking about, you know, I've just said the way I see it, and you've just shared your own experience. You know, you just did a 10-week program, you felt quite vulnerable at the end of it, and a little bit maybe unsupported, coming out, right, and feeling vulnerable, right,
Yeah.
as you put it. And in how soon did it take for you to relapse in behavior?
Um, about a month.
Okay. Did you, when you left, I always think that if you want recovery, because in your mind you probably, correct me if I'm wrong, you really did want it. You know, you was enthusiastic and committed to continuing, right?
I did for sure.
But because of the circumstances, the scaffolding may not have been in place. Well, it wasn't. So maybe it wasn't an immediate response to you coming out, but it was maybe an eventuality unless you could get that scaffolding in place.
Yeah, I didn't have the support. I mean, I had nothing to fall back on. It was really me fending against the world for the first time since treatment. And it was difficult because even there's so many sources of like, there's meetings I could go to and things, but just because of the way like my family operates, that was not an option for me because I was moving so frequently that I would go to a meeting, but then the next week I wouldn't be able to go to the same one. So I never was really able to establish a sense of, community outside of the clinic, and it was just me and my family. And at the time, um, my mom and I still had a really poor relationship, so it's not like I was really getting much support at home either. And
Mm.
um, there was also, my mom at the time was dating somebody who was actively using substances. So there was quite a lot of, it was not a very stable situation to be in. And when I was looking for support on the outside, I just moved too frequently to even like receive it. Also,
Yeah,
it was either like I lived 2 hours away from the nearest city, or one week I was with my mom, the next week I was with my dad. So it was really difficult. So it
mm,
did eventually lead to relapse.
okay. But you also identify that that was a good thing, not in the sense that, you know, that you put yourself at risk to going backwards, but it actually uh, projected you forwards more by going one step back and then you went forward, right?
Yeah. 'Cause-
So
yeah.
explain that.
I think that in the clinic, of course, I did a lot of work on myself. So I just wasn't the same person when I came out. So I don't know, I didn't get the relief I did before because self-harm was something that I would rely on, and it was super effective for me. For the moment, like the world was quiet and I felt peace and I felt calm, and there was something really like kind of addictive to it. But when I came out, I remember I was having a very like I was spiraling. I was having a downward spiral, and I knew I was having it because the clinic like allowed me to be able to identify kind of like take a step back and being like, oh, I'm having a downward spiral. So I knew I was going downwards. And I think it's kind of that consciousness about the fact that I was having a downward spiral that made it less effective,
Yeah.
because every single time before it's kind of been like this like hysteric panic, and then there would be self-harm, and then it would be relief. But the fact that it was kind of more controlled, and I knew I was panicking, but I knew it was happening, that when I finally did self-harm, I was not like, I don't know, overwhelmed enough. I wasn't panicked enough. There wasn't like this like influx of emotions in my mind for it to be effective, essentially. I don't know if I explained that well, but it's just something about knowing that what was happening
Yeah.
just removed, the impact.
Yeah, no, perfectly. That was really brilliant how you just described that. I really understood it. That was great, and I really relate again to the behavior and the nature of what you're describing. Not just in my own self, but in other people that I engage with and collaborate with. So it's a common thing, right? And um, that awareness, the self-awareness that you gain from doing some self-examination, if you want to call it that, awareness is a gift. It allows us to actually stabilize and regulate and get on top of things without it spiraling and it escalating and going uncontrollably the wrong way. So you just demonstrated that you put into practice what you've learned. It's okay to fall. It's what you do with it. Do you respond accordingly in a skillful, measured, healthy way, or are you still going to be reactive and do it unconsciously?
Yeah. I
That's
think,
how I put it.
I mean, that's a good way to describe it. I feel like it's such a difficult thing to try to like express, but if you know, you know.
You just know, man. It's something that self-awareness, um, you know, denial, ignorance, when we have to study, that's what you did for 10 weeks. You studied your 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 the way you're wired, you know? You came to understand, oh, this is the what, and this is why, and this is how I can change it.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. And I feel like relapse is got so much stigma attached to it as if it's a bad thing, and it doesn't have to be. I feel like it's part of the process, the learning growth process of life in general. We have to make mistakes to learn, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, um, when you came out, you joined the group, the aftercare group. That's an online space that I am part of. That I,
Yeah.
host, if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's the right word, but and you joined it. So up pops Layla onto that space, and it's a weekly group. The alumni, as we started this recording, I I mentioned the alumni that that join that space, and I feel like I do recall you were processing that journey of what you just took us through from leaving, relapse, and how you responded on those groups, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, I mean, I was on those groups for a really long time.
That's okay.
I
It's
stuck around for a while.
yeah, but why not?
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, I think it was good for me at the time.
say
But
that again, sorry.
I said I think it was what I needed was the like longer form support because I know that sometimes it can be frowned upon to be over reliant on, the aftercare programs, but I think that's what I needed considering my home situation and just everything I was, my day-to-day life.
Some seeds take longer to grow than others,
Yeah.
and not everyone has the everyone's circumstance is different, you know. I always refer to the term scaffolding, right? And some people have scaffolding put in place, so they're very much in a secure, supported environment, and then some people aren't.
Yeah.
So, I feel like it's okay to be in a process. And do you feel it's a process you'll be in for the rest of your life?
Um, I think yes, but maybe less actively because I feel like at the start I lived a very recovery focused life,
Hmm.
and now I do feel like I live a very standard life, not like, mundane life.
Hmm.
But whenever I feel like I need a little bit extra support, I always go back to it. It's like the first thing I do. And so I don't know, it's nice to know that it's there to
Yeah.
fall back on, but it's not central to my life anymore.
Again, I relate, Layla. I'm a little bit ahead of you in the journey. But I relate because I see it like an insurance policy for life. You've got a policy. You hold a policy um, of of insurance. Whenever you feel you need to make a claim and call it in, it's there.
Yeah.
Some people um, find it hard to move past that sort of bubble container. It's like the way I've done it is I've turned it into a lifestyle change. I don't know how you see it, but my life is just I've just created this lifestyle where it's really healthy to the best of my
Mhm.
ability. And sometimes I need to do an extra little bit of work on it, like you're saying. But most of the time, I'm just, it's quite an ordinary, if you want to use that term. What did you call it?
Mundane.
Mundane. In what sense? I think we mentioned this before we hit record, didn't we? What is your life like today? Tell us.
Um, I think a lot of people would think it's quite boring because there's quite an established routine to it, but I really enjoy it. It's just, I go to school and then on the weekends it's usually just study and then dinner and then run and go to bed. And there's something so calming and so peaceful about having the stability of a routine in place that I don't know, it's like it might be boring for some people, but to me it just makes me really like happy like cuz I have this space that's there every single day and it makes me feel safe. Um just cuz I know what I'm going to do and I know that the things I do are good for me. Like I know that if I study too much, I need to balance it out with running, which is something I enjoy. So, just having my routine and I know it works, it has been working there is like really reassuring. And of course I go out and I do other things, but having the like, the building blocks that I can, move around is it's really it's nice to have.
It's great. Absolutely great. And hobbies? Is it just the running that you enjoy?
Well, right now, uh that's kind of the only thing I really have time with because I'm coming up to my exam season. But I really like I love I don't know, because I spend so much time in school and like looking at my laptop and studying. I really like to get outside of my house in my free time. So I always go on walks, like beach walks is something that really helped me when I had lost a fellow. And that's something I always go back to if I feel overwhelmed. So, I mean, I don't really have many hobbies because I don't have much time for it, but um,
Yeah.
there's a there's a space and time for hobbies to come around.
Well, you got a lot of years ahead of you.
Yeah.
Layla, you got a lot of time ahead of you. And right now, currently, like you say, you're just studying. So, what are you studying? Do you mind me asking?
So I'm in a high school program called the International Baccalaureate. It's a 2-year program, and um, right, I'm just doing like the kind of the sciencey package, and I've applied to university. I'm hoping to study computer science and artificial intelligence later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
What's your interest in that? I mean, obviously you've got one because you want to do it. So what's the attraction to that?
I've just been really like STEM oriented ever since I was a kid. I think it's because I didn't like people fitting me into a box. So people were telling me like the science and math is for guys. So I was like, okay, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I don't know, I just took a liking to it from a really young age. I used to be really into space, very obsessed with it when I was like 8 years old. But then eventually, um, I got really interested in engineering. This sounds super nerdy, but I was part of like a robotics club uh, called, or like it was a robotics competition called FRC. And we won the world championships a couple years ago.
What?
And yeah,
Won a world championship?
yeah,
Well done. Oh my God.
yeah. That's like, I don't let people in on that one very often because when they hear robotics, they think I'm like the biggest nerd ever. But it's so much fun.
No.
And I was kind of on the back end of things on the coding and engineering side, but
My
I
God.
got really interested in like intelligence, both biological and artificial, and systems thinking. And I just really wanted to study because I think it's very interesting, like the interactions between artificial and biological intelligence.
My God. So could you like what's the term? I'm trying to think of the term. Hack into like NASA if you wanted to.
Not the type of like coding I did, but I think I could. I mean,
Don't answer that actually. Don't incriminate yourself. So do you think you'll end up in outer space, Layla?
I don't think so. I think I'm more bound for this world, but maybe you'll see me like interning at Google or something in a couple years.
Yeah, I feel like that's the way where you're heading, and it's great, man. I mean, it's just really inspiring to me. Do you feel you would have had a hope in doing any of this if you hadn't have taken some time out to look after yourself and heal and evolve in the way that you have?
Not at all. I mean, I had ambitions per se, but they really weren't my ambitions. They were everybody else's. So, and they weren't, I don't know, I didn't have a drive in me to do it. Like now I'm very passionate about it. I really want to go study. And so, that comes with all the motivation and, the drive to it. But before I've always been high performing in school. So I thought that my future was going to be in engineering, whether it was like aerospace. But that, like, no offense to any like aerospace engineers, but I find it not that interesting. And that's not what I want to have a career in. So, I think I was kind of just following this predetermined path that kind of aligned with what I liked, but was kind of like not really what I was interested in. It was kind of, predetermined.
Yeah. That's really good that you've established your own life aspiration and life purpose, even, and you're going to follow that. So that's
Yeah.
great. That's great. That's empowerment. Do you feel empowered?
Um, I guess I just feel less trapped. Like I feel like I'm actually living my life for myself now.
That's that's um that's the key to freedom,
Yeah, it
in my
is.
opinion. That's beautiful. You found your authenticity to the best of your knowledge at the moment. But you're young and you've still got many years ahead of you, and I have no doubt that you just keep putting one foot in front of the other in the way that you're doing. You're going to go on to great things, Layla. Do you know that? Do you feel that?
Mm, I think there's something in me that knows I will be like successful and happy, but I'm not recovered. No one ever is, so I still have a lot of self-doubt. But as time goes by, I know that will like start to dwindle and fade out.
It
But
will. It
yeah,
will. That's been my experience. The more you just grow, the more you just keep building your self-esteem, your confidence, just as long as you remain open to growth, and you just stay true to the path that you've set out on, you'll be okay. And you've got that policy, as long as you make the call when you need to. You're still friends with fellows, are you?
I am, but we're not in contact that often. But they're still
They're,
there. I
they're
have the
there. Yeah,
yeah.
they're there. Um, okay. One thing and then I'm gonna end it on here because I feel like this is a natural place to finish up. Your takeaway. One thing, if there's anyone listening, let's say we've got a 17-year-old who's listening to this, or a parent of a 17-year-old that's listening to this, and you've got that one thing that you feel is like the takeaway that you feel you could pass on as a little golden nugget, a pearl of wisdom, what would it be? It's probably maybe a handful, there's maybe quite a few, but there's just one.
Yeah, it's quite a loaded question, but I think just trying to reflect on what helped me the most or what was most valuable to me in my recovery. Um, I don't know. I think just do it for yourself because a lot of the time I was doing it for other people and it's never going to work if you do it for someone else. You have to do it for yourself and you have to want it for yourself. Cuz yeah, I mean things can be good. So yeah, you just have to find what you want because I know a lot of young people, especially teenagers, struggle with their identities and who they are. So I think it's really sometimes it can feel really difficult to identify what you want and where you want to go in your life. But I think once you find it, that's really the most valuable thing you can achieve.
Yeah. And it's the finding it's the hard part, I really identify with what you just said there, and it's absolutely on the money what you're saying. It's so on point. Um, there's got to be a desire within me. It's got to be, it's got to be heartfelt. It's got to be in your like a burning desire. The desire to want to make the relevant change has got to be stronger than the desire to stay stuck, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it's so hard to get to that point.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's true what they say that the gift of desperation? Do you feel like you've got to be at the low point, the lowest of lows to really make that sort of decision?
Mm, I don't know. I mean, I had to be. So maybe, but I don't think that should be the case for everybody. But I don't know. I feel like if you're already struggling with your mental health, then you kind of have to be.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like trust is a big part of it as well. Like it's just trust in the unknown,
Yeah.
and to step into it. And it's like blind faith. It requires like it feels like you're leaping off the edge of a cliff,
Yeah.
and, and you're not sure where you're going to end up. It's like it's scary, right? Um,
Definitely, it was scary at the start.
yeah. Well, look, we haven't got to do it on our own, we've just got to find one person. Do you feel like you had that one person to instigate your journey? I don't feel like you, by the sounds of it, you did. It played out in the way that it played out. You just ended up starting your journey with no um intervention from anyone, right? It was just your attempt that was the intervention itself, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, there kind of wasn't a person, but I know, I mean, I guess my person was myself. Because, eventually I
Oh,
ended up doing it for like myself, like 3 weeks into the clinic.
There you go. That's really profound what you just said there, Layla, and I will end it on this, right? What you just said there, the person that came in to save me was me.
Yeah.
That's really profound because that's what happened to me, and I did it not at 17, I did it a lot later in my early 30s, and I was waiting for that person to come and save me, to tell me everything's going to be all right and to take me away from this misery. But what I realized, like you did, once I ended up in a circle of people, like-minded people who were all getting real, getting honest about the situation, I suddenly realized, it's me. I'm the one that needs to turn up and save myself. No one else can do it for me. It's me.
Yeah.
So I congratulate you. I salute you for doing that at such a ripe young age.
Yeah. It's definitely a gift to have entered recovery so young because now I just have so many years to get, healthier relationships and a stronger foundation.
There we go. Well, it's very inspiring. I just got to thank you for giving your time so generously, Layla.
It's my pleasure.
Got a strong message, really, really great, strong message, and I hope anyone that is listening has found something in this story that can inspire you and motivate you to not give up hope and to keep going no matter what. Because I think that's the key there. I think that's the key there to unlock the door. What you just said right at the end, I I turned up to save myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. All right, Layla. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
Bye bye.